Hello, namaste to everybody. Enjoy my Kamakya. Uh, this is my second video. I will be doing every week a small video dealing with questions and answers because a lot of them have been coming and some of them are repetitive. So instead of and it's not even possible for me to individually answer everybody. So I hope that these are helpful. These will be short clips dealing with the most common questions. Many of the answers I might have actually given in various talks or podcasts or in different places, but I'm just collecting them together so it's easy for you to access. So, the first question I will deal with today is, and that's a very common question, how do you know that this is the right path for you? In the sense, spiritually speaking, of course, if you're not interested in spirituality, if you're not interested in sadhana and adhyatma, then that's a different matter altogether. But suppose if you are interested in spiritual growth, in adhyatmic progress, which is the right path for you? So there is sometimes it's possible for an individual to have an innate liking for a particular path, be it yoga, whether it's Vedanta, whether it's Tantra sadhana, whether it's related to the upasana of deities specifically. Uh, you determine based on your own likings, but one thing that is more or less common in across the paths inside the fold of dharma is that there is always somewhere or the other some influence of a deity that is going to come in. That much is certain. It was there since the ancient times, it is there in the medieval era, it's there even today. So even if you were to approach a traditional Vedantin, the original Vedantins, I'm not talking about the neo Vedantins, if you and I, whether it is the Advaita Vedanta or the Vishishta Advaita, the Dvaita or any other flavor of Vedanta, if you go to the original acharyas and the systems, you'll see that there is always deity upasana that is mandated at certain point in the path. I mean, even today the Shankaracharyas will worship their Shivalingas that have been passed down, handed down across generations. Come what may, on specific tithis they may do specific worship of different deities. So uh, that is the foundational pillar of Sanatana Dharma is Devata Upasana. Whatever be your path. Now this is actually a very complicated topic. Each deity can be linked to progress in a specific kind of path, a specific genre of self-development. We will not go there. We just take the basic idea. So deity upasana is a fundamental area of development in any path. Number two, I believe that the stage we are in right now, in general, um, deity upasana is one of the best things that one can do. It's much safer in a sense than practice of whether it's yogic, hatha yogic practices and others, which do require a very strong guidance from a living guru who is accessible. This is very important. So if you have a guru who is not accessible, then also it is not going to be much fruitful for you eventually if you once you start having experiences. And when it comes specifically to the parts of that are derived from the yogic texts, hatha yogic texts that relate to change or manipulation of the breathing, of postures, etc., then it is absolutely mandatory to have a living guru and an environment that is free from pollution in order to um, practice those paths without any kind of obstacles or difficulties or, to use my own language, a kind of backfiring. That will not happen. Whereas on the other hand, for deity upasana, it is relatively safer, at least at the initial levels. Even if you do not have a physical guru with you, you can still do some amount of upasana. I mean, all Hindus have some deity or the other placed in their home, and some little bit they do every day, right? It does not mean that they all of them have some guru and they have an initiation into the path. So there is a certain level of sadhana that you can do even without a guru. Now, whether I suppose this question also indicates there is a confusion regarding which is the right deity to worship in that sense. So, which is the right path? Is this the right deity? Uh, yes, initial stages it is sometimes not possible to have a correct understanding that this is the deity who is suitable for me. Once in a while, it is possible. There may be an individual who is for various Purvajanam samskaras that may get activated at a certain point in their life. They may have a clear connection to a deity. That's there. Everything is possible in this path. But I'm taking the statistically generic idea that would apply to most people. So you are not sure here which is the right deity, no problem. Start with Ganpati Upasana as one of the safest starting points of any sadhana. Whatever be your path eventually, whether you follow a formal Tantra sadhana, whether it's Vamachar, Dakshinachar, whatever it is, or you do Upasana of the Devatas in the Puranic way, which may not require an initiation at the initial stages, even then, it is very good to worship Ganpati if you are not sure whom to worship. Apart from Ganpati, you may also worship. Okay, there's another point when that needs to be mentioned. Whenever you are, whatever be your inclination towards whatever path you are choosing, ensure that you stick as far as possible to the traditional shastras related to the path. And for that, whether you yourself are aware of it or you speak to somebody who is aware of this, uh, that is a very good way of approach instead of trying to create and inventing the wheel from scratch. By this I mean that the traditional ideas of sadhana that have passed down for at least 2000, 3000 years or whatever period of time, those are time tested. Those are things that have produced the greatest of saints, greatest of upasakas, whatever else. So you can trust that those are things that have worked innumerable times in the past, they work still today, and they'll work even in the future. And that is why the Shastras are Sanatana. They are eternal because they have worked in the past, they work today, and they'll work later on. There is a specific Shakti, there's a specific Vidya, there's a specific power that is infused in the Shastras by the Rishis, by the divine beings, by Lord Shiva when he's giving the Tantra Shastras, or Lord Bhairava, which make them alive, awake, and capable of guiding guiding sampradayas and guiding a vast number of people for an extraordinarily long period of time. That is the test of the power that is inherent in the Shastra. Because the word Shastra also has the underlying essence of ruling, of controlling, of governing. What is the way you go about doing a thing? Shastras inside Sanatana Dharma, Shastras are the most important aspect. Remember this always. There is various times we have these kind of very loose ideas. Often I see which people say that, oh, I feel like doing this, or I think this is the right thing, or I feel based on their emotions, sentiments, or any kind of isms that may have imbibed in today's times. Now, keep those aside. Shastras are not subject to those things. They are, what they have been. Specifically, when it comes to the sadhana aspect of deities or any other sadhana aspect of any other path. For example, if you're practicing Raj Yoga, then you have to go to those texts which deal with Raj Yoga, which tell you what is the niyamas that you have to follow, the yamas that you have to follow, etc. Same way, if you have to worship Shiva, then you have to get that idea of how to worship Shiva in the whether it's the Vedika way, then you have the Rudram, whether it's the Tantrika way, then you have the Tantrokta mantras, the method of Shiva Upasana, of Shiva Linga, Abhishekam, etc. All these things, every bit of it comes from the Shastras. Every deity's Upasana path comes from the Shastras. In fact, it would not be improper to say that without the Shastras you would be blind. You, me, everybody. Not a single saint would have been produced of any deity. You would not even know who is the deity. You would not know who is Shiva, who is Vishnu, who is Kali, who is Ganpati, if the Shastras were not there. So Shastras are uh, the first guru of Dharma. And we often hear this term that, ours is not religion of the book. That is not exactly correct. That is a very loose, superficial idea, generally peddled by those who have not studied Dharma properly. Ours is a religion of multiple books. Each of the sampradayas and the paths has its own codified texts, shastras, which have been ratified by the rishis, by the gods, by the divine beings, which have been followed for thousands of years, and they have produced the greatest of saints and the siddhas and the upasakas. our job is not to reinvent that. You cannot reinvent that. You will, in fact, mess up if you try to do that. Our job is to stick to the dictates and the mandates that are given in the Shastras, follow them, have faith on them as the word of an alive being, as the a word of authority that comes from there. Have faith on them and follow the path. So the basic idea is try and orient your sadhana always with respect to the governing rules that are mentioned in the Shastras broadly. Do not experiment, tamper, or try going beyond that, or doing things based on I feel this is so it must be. Your feelings, sentiments, all them, put them aside. They are not the Shastras. So this is important. At any given point, you are choosing a Devata Upasana, follow the rules that are mentioned in the Shastras, because that has the greatest chance of success. And the further you deviate from the Shastra, uh, the more is the chance that you may actually um, come to regret that, if not then, maybe later. But that is the biggest blessing. It's like a Shastra is the thing that puts you the discipline, shows you the way to go about. Uh, the rules that govern the path, the rules that the deity likes. So when you say I like XYZ deity, it also means that you have to honor the Shastra that speaks about the deity. Deity is not devoid of the Shastra or outside of the Shastra. It is the path that is mentioned in the Shastras, which is an integral part of the Upasana of the Devata. That has to be understood. Now, having said that, initial stages, you do not confuse yourself too much with the reading of the Shastras and decoding them, because that requires patience, that requires practice, that requires a certain degree of intelligence in reading the Shastras. Okay, it is not always just a blind literal translation of it. Sometimes it is, sometimes it may not be. It depends. In the Tantra Shastras specifically, there are often Vija mantras given as symbolisms, not directly mentioned, so that even if you knew Sanskrit, and there might be a lot of people who know Sanskrit, uh, even if you read it, you may still not understand that what exactly is the process that is being told. And that is where the importance of a living guru comes. But that is only when you are deeper into Tantra sadhana. I am talking about a sadhana where you do not have a guru at the moment. So what you might do, if you have say if you want to worship Ganapati, you can actually pick up the Ashtottara Nama of Ganapati or Shastra Nama of Ganapati. These are today thankfully easily available on the internet, in bookstores, in other places, unlike a few centuries ago when these information, these texts, these namas, etc., stotras were only passed down in certain select families or select people. Today we have an explosion of all this information. So it's up to you to find out. Choose something. And then do not experiment with complicated mantras on day one. So either you choose an Ashtottara. If you do not have an Ashtottara, if you are not sure of it, then you choose a simple Nama mantra. Om Ganapataye Nama. There is no Vija also added to it. Okay. So this mantra, keep chanting sufficiently. By sufficient, I mean it should be in a day, you should at least spend close to maybe start with 30 minutes, later on go up to an hour. And this should continue for at least 4 to 6 months. If it is less than that, it is not going to be very fruitful for you. So you keep doing the sadhana. Along with it, you offer some simple pujas. You offer a naivedyam. You sit down at a specific time if possible. If not, then whatever time you have, light a diya, agarbatti, and start off. Now, you want to make it into an anushtanam, then you do the calculation how many malas of this mantra you want to chant, or how many recitations of the Ashtottara Nama you want to do in so many days. So, say if you want to do 1000 recitation of the Ashtottara, and you decide that okay, every day I'll do say 50 times. So you find out, or if you want to accelerate that, you want to do 100 times per day, that would take about 10 days. If you do it 50 times per day, 20 days. So you decide how many days you want to spend on this, how much time you can afford every day. Sit down calmly, light a diya, agarbatti, pray to Ganpati, Mahaganpati, and start reciting that. And at the end of the Anushtanam, go to a temple of the deity. As I mentioned in the last recording, go to a temple of the deity, uh, give or make some offerings there, give a little bit of puja to the deity, and feed people. connected to the deity. So when it comes to Ganpati, you might feed, children who are, or people in connected to Veda Pathshalas. If not, you can at least make an offering of a coconut and a dhoti and some little bit of amount of money to a priest in a Ganpati temple. Okay. So like this is dependent on which deity you are worshipping. So fundamentally, follow the sadhana based on the traditional paths given by the Shastras. And if you are confused that what is the path, you can always check with the most traditional authorities in a system. So in the Vedic path, you have the Shankaracharyas and the other mathas and the older things. In the Tantric path, there are so many Srividya sampradayas, as well as there are Kalikula sampradayas in the north, etc. Or speak to anybody who follows the Shastras more or less. Do not experiment doing something just because you heard somewhere or somebody told this, etc., which is not approved by the Shastras. Do not do that, because eventually, even if it initially feels good, at the end of the day, it is going to cause some or the other trouble. There is a reason why the Shastras have been governing for 2000, 3000, 4000 years. There is a reason why the methodology of sadhana has more or less remained intact all this time. Nobody has tampered with it. People of far greater caliber, competency, and power, and excellent siddhas and upasakas, they have followed those paths. That is why we follow them. Number two, somebody mentioned about certain experiences. Couple of people actually mentioned they did a Bhairava Anusthana. It is very good and heartening that people are doing Bhairava Anusthana, simple Bhairava Anusthana. Don't go into complicated Anushtanas. Simple Nama Mantra you can take, Om Bhairavaya Nama, and you can do Anushtanas. Bhairava is a fierce form of Lord Shiva. Anytime you do Anushtanams of deities, he or she can do a bit of karmic cleansing. That is there. Plus, additionally, there are always grahas that are moving. So, graha gochara also causes some amount of interaction with the grahas in your horoscope and may cause some disturbance here and there. Oftentimes, specifically people who have a greater concentration power while doing an anushtanam may see that towards the end, or say 3/4 of the end, or somewhere in the middle, you'll face obstacles. That is basically a sign that certain kinds of karmic baggages or some blocking things are being removed. The idea is to go through with the anushtanam and don't break it. Whether you, it's, do not expect any miracles happening right at the first anushthan or anything. And mind you, this is only for spiritual progress. It's possible that the deity may be happy with you and give you some kind of material benefit also, but don't bank on it. What I'm talking about is entirely from the spiritual perspective. So Bhairava Anushtanas sometimes for certain individuals may cause you to pass through certain states which clears some baggages and then eventually makes you psychologically far stronger than you are. Because Bhairava's one of the gifts that he gives to the sadhak is strength in the mind and body, so that you are capable of handling far more intense amount of shaktis, intense amount of powers, and higher states of development, higher states of consciousness. Whether you go to the Vedantic route of the Brahman, or whether you go to the higher states of Devata Siddhi, your mind and body has to be perfectly tuned and capable of handling that amount of pressure. And Bhairava is a Devata who creates the Adhara. That is why he is so important in Tantra Shastras and in general. Number one. Number two is that so choose a anusthana that is doable. Don't take something very absurdly huge that you cannot go through. So say if you are doing Bhairava Anushtana of the Om Bhairavaya Nama, you may choose to do say 5 malas or 6 malas or something like that initially for some days. Then you choose to do an Anushtanam. If not a full, do a Laghu Anushtanam, which is the 240 malas of the mantra you want to complete, something like that. Start off small. At the end of it, go to a Shiva temple if there is no Bhairava temple. Get a Rudrabhishekam done. If not Rudrabhishekam, at least pour some water, some milk, some Belpatra, etc. If there's a Bhairava temple in your town, then go to the Bhairava temple, make offerings that are appropriate to the temple, etc. So these kind of things you can do. If you do Anushtanams of a deity multiple times, do not expect anything on first Anushtanam. Minimum 2 to 3, sometimes even 5 in some cases. And keep some gaps between them. Don't start off immediately then. Don't rush. Remember that sadhana is not a 100-meter sprint, it is more like a marathon. So you'll have to conserve your energy and work accordingly. So if you do 2 to 3 anushtanams, and you are able to pass through the obstacles, because there will be badhas, your karmic blockages will be removed in order that you can enter a much higher state of sadhana. Okay, it is in fact because of the karmic baggages or blockages or whatever you call it, uh, that is why spontaneously spiritual development does not happen to somebody. The whole point of the sadhana is to prepare the mind and body, cleanse the karmas to some degree, as well as make oneself competent in order to handle the pressure, the higher kind of subtle power of the deity whom you are invoking and calling. All right. So I think I'll end it here. And as I mentioned, every week I'll be coming and making a small video on some of the important questions that come repetitively come, so that it helps people, and it makes your sadhana better. All right. Jai Maka.